A very important component of your job, Kurt, is making gardening accessible to people that might have a limited range of motion, may not be as strong as other gardeners.
Absolutely.
And one thing that's super important there is selecting the right tool for the job, right?
It is. That's part of the assessment process. You see where a patient may need assistance if adapted equipment is needed. And there are, fortunately these days, equipment that's specifically made for gardening to meet those needs. One of the best things you can do is to have good smart setup, soft soil, raised beds or large containers that make the process easier. But if you have loss of function or weakness perhaps in an arm or your hands, then there are some wonderful tools to use.
Now, well, let's go through some of these that you have, because many of these are tools that I've never seen before.
Right. They may look a little different, but for instance, you may have trowels or something that you can use as a hoe that fits on your arm with this brace, allows you to hold on to the handle, and that way you can use that arm motion to make holes in the raised bed or the container. Some very lightweight tools are made out of plastic. This one has an ergonomic handle. If you have limited wrist flexion, you're able to dig in the soil. This is just lightweight. It makes it much easier if you have loss of strength and aren't able to pick things up. Light plastic tools are durable, but they can also be easier to handle. We have tools that have the trigger grips. That makes it just a little easier to hold on to.
Right.
If you have arthritis, you know, it's tough holding smaller handles like that. Things that you can perhaps cut flowers or even light pruning. These are cutter gatherers that allow you to make a cut and then hold on to what you've cut, bringing it back to you. So it doesn't just cut it off and have it fall on the ground. You may have trouble then bending over to pick it up. So it makes it much easier. Tools that have extensions. That way, if you're sitting in a chair or a wheelchair, you can extend them to any length to accommodate your arms. Those are pretty handy. Some have interchangeable tools at the end.
Wow. And there are a lot of things that we can find just around the home or in retail garden centers and shops. There's a lot of focus of late that's being put into the ergonomics of tools.
Absolutely.
And how that takes some of the impact out of the joints.
Right.
And makes it more comfortable to garden.
Absolutely.
You know, here are a few here that I think are great examples of ergonomic tools. Instead of the straight handles, you know, these really nice handles that utilize all the strength of the hand.
Yep.
This is a basic scraper, and especially if we're dealing with soil that's already somewhat loose, it's an easy way to weed, also to allow the
cultivate
roots.
your soil there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, with the curved design, if you have limited wrist flexion or arthritis, it makes it a little easier on those joints.
This is a weeder that I like to use, same kind of ergonomic design, and I love the way that this is shaped. So you know, especially if you're weeding things like dandelions, that it's hard to get rid of that taproot.
Right.
In fact, if you don't excise the entire taproot, you're simply making more little
dealing with
baby
it again.
dandelions.
Right.
And so this is a really easy tool. Penetrates down to the ground. You're able to extract the entire root. I also like, you know, just a basic scoop for gardening. If you're moving soil into containers, it's not as big as a shovel, you know, but it's also not as small as a trowel. And so it's a really good universal tool. Once again, this great ergonomic design. It's a very comfortable handle, so you can work with it for hours without any fatigue.
Right, absolutely. There's also some very easy things you can do at home. If you don't happen to have an adapted piece of equipment, taking a standard trowel like you'd find, taking a little bit of plumbing insulation, cut it, wrap the handle, maybe a little duct tape that holds the world together.
Absolutely.
And you have a built-up handle that makes it much easier to hold on to. I also use these very inexpensive, these are kids' boards for surf, and they're great for kneeling pads if you're working, you know, down on the ground. It's easier on your knees. So
that's wonderful.